Hey folks! Today on Independent Authoring, we're talking about the difference between being a writer and an independent author. First, let's address what those two things mean. Writer. In this case, I'm talking about someone who is traditionally published, working through traditional publishing, either through publishing novels with a Big Five publisher, or submitting articles to various magazines, or submitting short stories to various venues that publish short fiction. Someone who's solely going the traditional route. That's what I'm terming writer, just for the purposes of this video. Next, independent author. When I say independent author, in this case, I mean a person who is doing all of their own writing and also acting as their own publisher. Okay? So that's the distinction. They are not publishing through Big Five traditional publishing methods. They are publishing themselves, either through CreateSpace or a small press or similar. But that's the distinction for the purposes of this video. Okay, now, the reason this came up, a few days ago, I was hanging out with a friend of mine who is also a writer. But she's also a full-time baker. And we were talking about how much we write. And I suddenly realized that she writes as much as I do. And she has a full-time job that isn't writing. And for a minute, this made me really sad. I stopped and did this for a while because I thought, hey, I'm a full-time independent author now. Writing is my job, isn't it? Shouldn't I be writing at least as much as a person, even though she's very prolific, shouldn't I be writing just as much as someone who has a full-time job that isn't writing? And then I thought about it for a minute, and I realized I'm actually doing the same amount of writing that I was doing when I had a full-time job that wasn't writing. And I thought about that for a second, and my friend started talking as I was pondering this, and she and my brain sort of at the same time came up with this very important reminder. When you are an independent author, writing is only a part of your job. The other parts of your job are, well, they're myriad, and we'll talk about exactly what they are in a second, but there are a lot of other pieces to it. Writing isn't the only one, nor is it even half, or even maybe a quarter of what you have to do. Once you've got a book out, there's a ton of other things you have to do. And so, for those of us that are independent authors, it's a nice reminder to look at what you do every day, look at what you do every week, look at what you do every month, and analyze the amount of time that you spend producing something new and selling the things that you've already produced, which is kind of a big deal. And we have no one else to do it. It's part of being an independent author, whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, that's a really good reason to go the traditional publishing route. So, okay, let's break it down. What do independent authors do? Well, first, let's look at what all writers do. And by all writers, again, I'm now just lumping together traditionally published authors and independent authors. But first, let's look at what I deemed writers earlier. People going through the Big Five or submitting to magazines, etc. Okay, these people are writing, revising, doing research, reading, and they're producing copy to attract agents and editors. Okay, either proposal copy or query copy or submission copy, right? They're doing all of that. They are also doing appearances, or they should be, right? So they're showing up to places and talking about their book or their articles or whatever. They're doing live events. That's part of the gig as well. So those are things that they do, and that's a lot. Let's not pretend that that's not a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So that's the writer gig. Okay, so now, if you're an independent author, what does that mean? that means that you're doing the writer gig and you are also in charge of your own marketing and publicity, which means you have to do some graphic design. You're also your own distributor. You also have to produce all of your copy for everything. You have to book your own events and organize them. And you have to do all of that. Oh, plus, both of these gigs require, these days, managing some sort of internet platform. You have to have a web presence these days. Even traditionally published authors have to do this, and they wind up usually having to be in charge of their own website or blog or similar, sometimes with help, sometimes not so much. But the key thing here is that if you are an independent author, you're working a couple of jobs, and you're cramming them into one. So, if you're doing all of these things, you shouldn't feel too terrible about only writing as much as you did before you became a full-time independent author. Because, well, depending on what your productivity was like. But certainly I'm not upset that mine is the same as it was before I became a full-time independent author, because I'm basically working the full-time job of marketing, publicity, graphic design, and distribution, right? All rolled into one. That's my full-time job, and then I write whenever I can. And the reminder of that was really powerful. It made me feel a lot better about myself. I'd been feeling a little bit down about the amount of new words I produce, and I still write a lot. I have, in the past month, produced about 40,000 new words of fiction, and earlier this year I did a ton of revision. I still plan to write another probably 100,000 words before the year is out. The fall tends to be my big productivity time. This is when I churn out a lot of new work. So I hope by the end of December to have 150,000 new words, which will be one full novel and a novella. And then into the revision process I go again. So still feeling very productive, but that's pretty much how much I wrote on average in previous years. Granted, it was more like 75,000 words on average per year while I was working full-time. And of course I was getting no revision done, and I was not selling anything, and I hadn't published anything. So that's kind of the big marker change there. So, point is, if you're looking into publishing, right, you're new at this and you're saying, hey, I want to publish a book, but I don't know if I should try for traditional publishing or if I should try to become an independent author. And what I'm here to say is, before you decide to become an independent author, you really need to carefully consider how you will feel about doing all of these other things on top of being a writer. So, writer, independent author, these sets overlap, but there's this huge portion of stuff that you have to do as an independent author that you don't have to do as a traditionally published author, which is writer for the purpose of this video. So please consider that. It's important. And it's individual. It's not for everyone. I love being an independent author, even though I'm not able to spend all my time gloriously kicking back on a beach and writing. I still enjoy everything that I'm doing. There are a couple pieces that I don't enjoy as much. I'm not a big fan of the marketing piece. But I'm learning, I'm getting better at it. It's becoming more enjoyable the better at it I get. And also, the more I learn about it, the more I realize that it needs to be more organic and less, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. So that's an important piece as well, making it far more enjoyable, because I hate, buy my book. But I love talking to people, helping people out whenever I can, any of these kinds of exchanges even, right? And if that leads to book sales, awesome. And if it doesn't, I've still enjoyed this experience, and I've lost nothing. So that is this episode of Independent Authoring. So I hope everyone enjoyed this. If you liked it, go ahead and hit the thumbs up down there. If you feel like you want to hear more about this, hit the subscribe button. If you have questions, put them down in the comments because I would love to answer questions for people in future videos. And I hope everybody's doing well. Take care.